much for being here. We are really excited about this panel. Obviously, we're Creative Commons, so we're really excited about things that empower digital creators. And you all are just such a wonderful group to talk about this, because I feel like you have completely different perspectives coming in at this topic. And I'm thinking that we can keep it pretty conversational. So you all are already doing this, but I would say let's stay off mute. So like if you've got like a giggle in response to something someone says, or maybe if the puppy shows up again and we all go off, you know,
he figures his way out of the crate. He has something to say about owning your own content.
Copy left. The copy left puppy all the time.
Right.
I love it. We need to get this thing on Twitter. But so I figure we just start with some like,
for sure.
Y'all can just make your initial remarks and introduce yourselves and maybe a little bit about like what you're working on. And then we'll just jump into some questions. And for the folks that are listening, if you can just pop your questions in the chat, we have a section of time at the end where we will do audience Q&A. So we should be able to get to, well, hopefully everyone, I don't know, the puppy might dominate, but we will do our best.
Listen.
So I figure Kokayi, Joespha, then Colin, then Jarvis. We'll go in that order for intros and then go from there.
Peace, everybody. I appreciate the opportunity to share, and thank you, Creative Commons, for offering this space to discuss creativity and the empowerment of digital creatives. Kokayi is Swahili for one who summons the people, and was a given name when I worked as a mentor in the Rites of Passage program for underserved and marginalized youth in DC. I express my own creativity via multidisciplinary arts practice and music. Most of this life I've spent as an avid seeker of the creative spice, and that's spice if you like doom, or dust if you like Golden Compass, and that's the series, not the movie. But I'm always in search of the DNA of creativity, and I went to Ethiopia to look into creative spaces, coffee culture, and the intersections there. Currently, I work as an Interledger Foundation, work with them as a grant manager, web ambassador manager, to identify and activate a variety of individuals from communities that have been historically marginalized in technology and structurally excluded, to find ways to get them support while they do cool stuff. I look to connect dots in order to connect communities of web advocates and leaders while promoting creative and innovative solutions to connect us all, and examine looking for advancements in technology and standards that move open payment technology and financial inclusion forward while connecting the massive amounts of siloed creative communities that actually could benefit from knowing one another. My want is to link creatives to creative spaces and people, and examine the ways in which to monetize their content without ads, middlemen, and paywalls. In doing this work with Grant for the Web, we also right now have an open application which closes tomorrow. So if you can hustle and get the grant in, hustle and do so. If not, there will be more opportunities to do that. So get on it, keep us in mind, because there are a lot of opportunities out here. And I look forward to this conversation, meeting and knowing you all, and hollering at Dipper. Easy.
That's lovely. Thank you, Kokayi. Joespha?
Yes, I hate to go after that. Mine's going to be small and so serious sounding. Like, I do things with technology. That's what mine's going to sound like. So my name is Joespha Haden Champosi. I am the executive director of the WordPress project. Our software supports about 42% of the web at the moment, and it is an open source software, a freely available open source software. And so our mission is to democratize publishing, and I really believe that at the heart of the ability to democratize publishing is also democratizing opportunity and empowering people to do what they need to do and what they want to do and what they're called to do with software that's not expensive and hard and impossible to keep track of. And so that's me. I've been doing that since like 2019, but I've been in the project since about 2009. So, ta-da.
Oh, nice. Wonderful. Thank you. Colin?
Yeah. My name is Colin Sullivan. I lead the legal policy and compliance teams at Patreon, which is a membership platform that makes it easy for artists and creators to get paid. And Kokayi, I really love the way you framed it in terms of like disintermediating the ad revenue and being able to directly connect to your fans. And that's really what we're all about. Sure. And I think it's especially relevant to Creative Commons because really the viewpoint we have is that we're in the middle of the second renaissance. And, the last 20 or so years of the internet have been all about content distribution and being able to distribute all of your content to all of your fans. But it's still hard to make it as a creator. And that's really what we're trying to figure out, is how do you become successful? How do you actually run a business and make money as a creator? And I think if we have a lot more creators that are making money, Creative Commons becomes a lot easier, because as part of Creative Commons, you're asking creators to give up some of their rights around content. And when you're coming from a place of financial insecurity, it's really hard to ask creators to give up some of their rights. And so that's where I think if we have a world full of creators with financial security, there's going to be a lot more generosity in the commons.
I love that framing of it. I'm excited for this renaissance. Jarvis, you are a creator.
I'm Jarvis. Yeah, and prior to that, so currently, hello, I'm Jarvis. I make YouTube videos and podcasts and Twitch streams, and just like am a overall internet goofball. But prior to that, I was a software engineer and engineering manager at Patreon. As Colin mentioned, a membership platform that makes it easy for artists and creators to get paid. I also still remember
off the top of your head, that was good.
How we're supposed to describe the company. So shout out
indoctrination. Let's go.
PR team, training us well. No, but yeah, like I kind of grew up sort of in this I guess you could make the like left brain right brain kind of comparison thing, where I grew up drawing and like being really into writing like stories based on my favorite cartoons and printing the scripts out and then going out in the street and playing with like the kids in my neighborhood, but then also being like a little tech nerd. And so I think that those seeds were planted very early on in my life, and they have now sort of blossomed into me, being a creator, or excuse me, becoming a software engineer, studying computer science, moving on to also like being a tech nerd and in high school giving a presentation about net neutrality and talking about like, hey guys, this is going to be a problem. And then my other 16-year-old like compatriots were like, we have no idea what you're talking about. And
right. Like we're talking
10 years later, they're like, wait a second, this seems familiar.
Right.
And then like, I got into studying computer science, not because it was a class I was able to take in high school, but because I used to listen to a podcast that was like two technologists in New York that talked about it, and they licensed with Creative Commons. And so like when I was in high school, I was like, Creative Commons, share alike license. Okay, what's that? And always being a fan of like creators, I then moved on to want to work on behalf of creators and use the skill sets that I had in tech to sort of work on a platform like Patreon that could, be very close to that community. And then it just so happened that being close to that community, I was like, okay, guys, I'm going to start this little hobby. And then that like turned into not a hobby. And I've been doing full-time YouTube stuff for 2 years now.
Oh, that is the success story right there that I'm not going to tell my kids. Just because Jarvis can do it doesn't mean you can do it. That's cool.
Just because Jarvis has a puppy cam doesn't mean you get
a puppy cam. Not everybody eats the puppy cam. Okay, chill out, everybody.
Puppy cam is a very different story.
It's the most popular anticipated career choice for kids when you ask them these days is YouTube.
Exactly.
I know.
Exactly.
It's weird. I think that one, I guess, responsibility that I feel is accurately communicating what, like not giving a false sense of, just because of this type of stuff that I make. So I do like internet commentary, like comedy based around bad movies and internet trends. Like right now there's a trend on TikTok where kids are stealing sinks and bathroom mirrors from their high schools. And so I like made a video about that and, talk to kids and talk to high school students, and then was like, this is funny, but also this is not a good idea. Right. So it's like, I see where you are as a high school kid who's, wanting to be a little scamp, but at the same time, like, so that type of thing is maybe something I'll talk about, and I brought that up for a reason that I have now forgotten. So,
and it's okay.
Well,
yeah,
it's okay.
We'll figure it out.
Just like the responsibility I feel to, like, given my position, I don't feel the need to provide a inauthentic picture of what it's like to be a creator. I think that working at Patreon was really humanizing to me, because I used to not put creators on a pedestal, but just feel like it was like this inaccessible life, you know? And we, like at Patreon, we had a conference called PatreCon, where the first year we had like 50 creators come into our office on a Saturday, and there were workshops and you know, roundtables, and I volunteered and just sat there and took notes. This is before I had a YouTube channel, and I was just like, wow, it's so interesting to learn that creators struggle with, you know, financial insecurity and, you know, feeling like they're at the mercy of platforms that could change on a whim and like impact their bottom line, and that kind of stuff kind of made me realize that it is just a job. Like, no, it's a cool job that a lot of people want to do, but at the same time, it has many challenges, and we should be open and honest about those.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, that's an excellent segue actually to one of the questions that we had prepared, which is, you know, what it means to really own your own work, because you've already mentioned sort of potentially feeling or noticing vulnerabilities and feeling locked into platforms and so on. So yeah, in that vein, like what does that mean to you, either for yourself as creators or, you know, your communities that you work with?
I mean, for me personally as a musician, owning the work is being able to do whatever I want to do with it, right? And I think that's the issue that you run across most of the time for people who create music or create video, film, whatever you're working with. It's like, if I give this work up, do I actually get to control it? You know, where it lies, where it goes, whatever residuals come from it. Can I license it myself? Can I, you know, like right now I'm supposed to go license my work to somebody, but I have to make sure that I own everything, 100% of it, right? And I think that's what happen when you talk about financial insecurity and you talk about artists and ownership. That's the part that they worry about. It's like, if I give this to you, like, what do I get over time? Because we all hear the stories, you know, you start out 20, you got massive hits. By the time you're 45, you have no hits, no house, and no job, and no car, and no puppy cam. Like, it's all gone, right? And so that's what creatives worry about, is the ownership of it means that I'm able to exploit it in the way that doesn't exploit me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Adding to that, I think, oh, sorry, was someone else about to go?
Joespha,
please. I've spoken enough. I'll come back around at the end.
All right, write it down so you don't forget.
Yeah, I'm writing it.
Yeah, I think the part that really gets to me about like owning all of what you're putting out is not only like the media that you're producing, but also, as a former artist, I was a trained musician and tried to make a living doing that for a while. Like, the part that, as Jarvis was saying right at the top, that people aren't always clear about when you're starting to do that is that not only does your intellectual property belong to you and should belong to you, but also all of the hustle that you did to get your IP out there and to get a following and to get a community and to get people to listen to you or read what you're writing or whatever. Like, you shouldn't have to do that multiple times. The platform that I built my first website on has gone away. And like, if I had spent 2 or 3 years just pouring my heart and soul into the job of making me into a business, and also the job of being an artist, and also the job of being a brand, like, if I had put all of my heart and soul into those 3 different areas of work, and then discovered that I had to leave this behind when they shut it down because I didn't actually own any of it, like, that is a heartbreaking reality. I moved off of platforms before they shut down, and then I stopped being a paid musician, and so it didn't matter anymore. But like, knowing what you own as far as your sweat equity, as well as the brilliance that comes out of your mind, is really hard to identify on platforms right now. We talk about walled gardens a lot, and I worry a lot about walled gardens as an open source person. And knowing, like, you can start a walled garden as a kickstart to your concepts, but then when to move away and how to safely take all of your content and all of your work with you, I think is a really big and important question.
And I think especially the ownership of the audience here is really important, because we talk about owning the content a lot, but it's also the audience, because ultimately the content is going to become a source of living for you through the audience that you reach. And so if you're locked into one platform, then you don't really own that audience, or at least on many of the content distribution platforms today. And so being able to own that audience is a really important factor in building that financial stability over time.
Yeah.
I mean, adding to Colin's point, it can be very frustrating as a creator to feel like you're reaching, you have one platform where you've got the majority of your eggs. That's, and the, like I primarily am on YouTube, and I can reach the most people there. And so it's scary if that, like, not that YouTube is going to go away, but YouTube can change something that makes the platform less attractive to me or less feasible for me. And it's changing things every day and frustrating people every day. So you never know. But that creates a lot of anxiety and insecurity around, like, what is like the concept of an audience, the concept of your reach is this very ephemeral thing, a very nebulous thing that no one can ever, like, you can't, it's really hard to grasp onto, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And
because it could move at any moment.
And it is constantly moving in some way or another, your audience is, like, I watch 2 YouTubers that I've watched since I was 14, but none of the other ones, it's like, because your audience it grows and ebbs and flows, and people change and interests change, and we're all ships passing in the night, but just at scale. It's a lot of ships. But the point I was gonna circle back to from earlier was that ownership, just to add another perspective, can also mean being in control of your own narrative. Yes. I think that as an influencer, or in my space, you're often negotiating with brands who have a vested interest in wrestling that narrative away from you, be it through, like I'll talk about Vessi shoes, the waterproof, sneaker that you should totally buy for 45 seconds. And then I'm like, all right, back to the funny stuff. And and sometimes like I have a team, and I have a law firm that I work with that is between my manager and lawyers are working to seek out all of the, like, random gotchas in a contract that maybe gives a brand the ability to, like, take the ad, cut it out, and put it in a place that I wasn't in control of, like, the context that it was being presented, like that kind of thing is something that is afforded to me given the resources that I've built up now, but not something that I had when I was starting out. And I remember, and which gets into a greater thing, is it's so easy for creators at the beginning of their career to be taken advantage of. I see that constantly, both in an industry where a lot of the information around the industry is opaque, it's withheld, it's very hard to just find stuff out. And not everybody, when they're negotiating their first, like, contract, can say, hey Colin, like, literally I was like, hey Colin, do you have any references that I could talk to like this contract? And not everybody can email Colin. Not everyone has a great resource like Colin.
Not everyone has a Colin around.
People don't have access, right? I think that's the thing, is when you start out, it's like, be wary of all the vultures. Like I'm for artists, younger artists, I'm like, there's a sign when you're going into the music industry. It's like, beware all ye who enter here, right? And I tell them, there are thieves on the road. This is not Robin Hood. They literally will take everything from you as you move down this road towards what your career is supposed to be. But at the same time, I don't want artists to develop the patina that happens to most artists when they just become cold individuals, and their life, their dream, right, of creating turns into the reality of creating. And that reality and that dream of two starkly different things that cause so much anxiety and frustration in artists. And I watched a whole bunch of my friends quit because they thought that art was going to pay their entire salary and everything else. And when it didn't, They hated the art. They didn't hate the business. They hated the art. And I'm sorry, Joespha.
No, I don't have any. I don't have any resentments about it.
All right,
but
cool.
like I was in there.
But you know the reality of it, right? You know the reality of when the check ain't hitting. Like the check ain't hitting, and the residuals you thought you were going to get don't come, or the contract got whatever, or the manager, whatever. And if you don't have those resources, and actually the stories, right? I think artists need to tell more stories. Creators need to tell the real stories. Like, no, this wouldn't have happened. Like, stop trying to finesse your brand into I made it overnight and then I'm just so cool and look fresh. Like, it's like that wasn't it. Like, it was sweat equity. It was a whole lot of no's. It was a whole lot of hell no's. It was a lot of get out of here's. Like, before you even got to a space where people were even finding you, right? There was a lot more critique and criticism before there was a lot more acceptance and love and care. And to be honest about that and what that means towards the stuff that you're creating, the love of the things that you create, right? As opposed to just, I'm good at it, so I just create this stuff, right? Which has no, empathy or feeling or energy behind it. It's just you're good at it, so you're just making it, right? Which is because it'll make money. But when you are in that space where it's not making money, it's a lot of passion and love that goes into that. And I think that's a story that we need to make sure that we maintain and continue to tell, especially when we talk about ownership and how we move forward. And even, that question about sharing, which if y'all want to get into that, that's a great space.
If we have any young artists in here, we're not telling you to give up on your dreams. We're telling you to be realistic about your dreams. Just in case anyone's wondering, you got here and you're like, yes, we can make our own voices. And then we're like, it's hard. That's all we're saying. We're not saying it's impossible. Right.
No dream killers, just, manage your expectations.
Exactly right.
And everybody's situation is different as well. Some people have different risk profiles that they're comfortable with. And for me, I had to pay off my student loans and feel like I had a reasonable nest egg that I could leave my very comfortable and secure job to venture into the unknown of, a new thing where I didn't know if the paychecks were going to continue coming, and that leap of faith I think is a thing that everyone has to go through. But the size of that gap and how comfortable you are with it really depends from person to person too.
I've made multiple leaps, so I've leapt off the cliff millions, at least 5 separate times in my life, right throughout my career. Like, I'm sick of this job, I hate it, I'm doing music full time. Ooh, this ain't paying, I need a job. And there's no shame in that. I think that's the other reality, is there's no shame in that. It's like, understand who you are as an artist, that you can dip your toe in and out as much as you want. Like, your success is really built on how much you want and how much you want to get in there. But I don't believe in being a starving artist. I believe eat well, live your life, pay your bills, do your thing, and then do your art when you can, and until you can do it, until you can make a Jarvis move where you got a nest egg and you can step out.
Unbiased opinion, I agree with that take.
That's a good segue, because one of the things we wanted to talk about a little bit was the perceived tensions between ownership and sharing. So like, now we've touched on the fact that you need financial security really in order to be able to truly be a creator. And how do you get to that financial security? Probably not by giving your things away, but maybe you can give some things away and maintain control of your content for others. And so, I would like us to sort of think out loud a little bit about these perceived tensions, because from where CC sits, like, we acknowledge that when you openly license something, like, you're doing that from a place of privilege. You really are. Like, you have the ability to give that away and share it in that sense. And so I would be curious to sort of hear from you folks, sort of what your perspective is on this, and like also just like the application of these free culture licenses within the creative communities that you live and breathe and work in.
This is super interesting. I think that, well, there's one case that I think about a lot, which is in my space. Not the website MySpace, but in there's this another nebulous concept of like the economy of attention, and a lot of times like you are trying to capture that attention, but there's no way to know how much you're getting, and and how much you need and what attention is going to lead to what opportunity or what revenue or whatever. But when you open yourself up to sharing, there is an opportunity of new attention and attention that could benefit you down the line, which can lead you to make very like non-intuitive moves. For example, I've been copyright striked on YouTube by, by IP, like the holders of IP that I've, would argue that is in fair use, but then I, go through the process. But if the same thing were to happen to me, I would almost never fight it depending on the character of the use, because I have a working theory of like, this attention is actually good for me. There's a political commentator, a Twitch streamer named Hassan Piker, who has a huge Twitch stream and one YouTube channel of his own. And I kid you not, hundreds of people uploading his Twitch streams in clips. And there's a whole economy of this. People taking clips of Twitch streams, cutting them onto YouTube, and they can even get the revenue from that, which just sounds very counterintuitive. But the hedge, and you're right, Anna, it is from a place of privilege, because this person is already making a comfortable living, so they can afford to take this risk. The hedge is that you are now creating so many new eyeballs and actually leveraging so much free labor from people who now have an incentive in like making money off your content in exchange for more eyeballs on you, with the hope that that funnels back into your, with the hope of capturing that attention in a very nebulous fashion, and that funneling back into you just being someone who's talked about, and that leads to people naturally coming down the funnel of the fan funnel or whatever.
Yeah, I think that aspect of privilege is really important here, especially as it relates to the the emotional state of creators as they're sort of making some of these decisions. Because something I've noticed in terms of like, we have a lot of creators interacting and sharing, and various disputes around that sharing happening on Patreon, and I think there's a lot of very rational arguments for saying, just like Jarvis mentioned, like, hey, more attention is often a very good thing, and it can actually lead to more financial success down the line. Cory Doctorow very famously gave away all of his books and led to success for him. So there's lots of examples of this where you can just sort of give away stuff and it comes back and pays off financially. But emotionally, it's really tough to make that decision. And there's this great comment about moral rights in the chat here of also just like, as an artist, sometimes you don't want to give up that creative control over your work. And so you need to be in a place of like feeling really secure, feeling like you have that privilege, and then you can start to make some of those riskier decisions where like, maybe I can share a little bit more and, let it out of my control. And maybe that will result in some more success down the line. But it's a really tough, just like emotional decision to make.
If I can offer a perspective from a different sort of creator standpoint, I believe that writing code is a creative endeavor. I've seen all of my devs around the world building something out of nothing. I'm like, look at this terrible problem. And then 10 weeks later, they show me a thing I didn't know could exist. I love it. But from that standpoint, like the tension between should you give back your work for free to something, and why, and where are the benefits? Like, obviously for WordPress, this is a bit different. Like, we have this whole essentially tithing system. Like, we understand that giving back to WordPress is absolutely a question of privilege. We encourage every business that makes a valuable living off of WordPress to dedicate back 5% of their resources, however that looks, and it's aspirational, so we're not checking for anything. But like, the first few times that you go to major corporations that make a profit with WordPress and talk about like, hey, WordPress has given to you, how you giving back to this? Like, because there are a bulk of people using WordPress that absolutely are not making money with it yet, that absolutely don't have any sort of stability to like license their product in a way that is freely available to people, let alone stop and be like, I will also give some of my product back to this platform, this software that I never knew existed before. Like the difficulty in switching that mindset around like, now this thing has given enough to me that I want to give it back to other people that I'll never know and I'll never see. Like it requires a lot of extra oxygen for you, you know? And myself, every time that I go out and like try to bring new people into the WordPress project, we have like 1,500 active contributors over the course of the year, but like millions and millions and millions of websites in the world that are making money or attempting to make money or making a name for themselves. Like it's always a really careful discussion around like freeloaders as the concept goes in economy, you know, in economics. Like that's not a bad thing here. We want to make sure that everybody can have access to a way to own their voice online and get their thoughts out and try to build their own version of a platform. And like switching from, I finally got through that daily hustle and I have a long-term plan for myself into, and now I'll help the future hustlers, the future people coming up behind me. Like it feels hard to talk about, especially in like software creation spaces, but I think it's an incredibly vital switch in your mindset once you can get there. Like everyone's trying to give back to something collectively at the end of the day in open source, and kind of reminding people of the long-term benefits of that is always what I try to hinge on. And I hope the other WordPress leaders around also try to hinge on that as well. So
that's dope. I come from a certain era. I'm from the era of the mixtape.
Yeah.
Right? So mixtapes, when mixtapes popped off, you know, record labels tried to stop them, but what they started noticing is a lot of artists started getting a lot of exposure. So that speaks to the eyes that Jarvis is talking about, right? Those eyes started to open up, and then you're like, oh my God, 50 Cent would not be 50 Cent if it wasn't for mixtapes. Eminem would have never discovered him. He never would have been out here making in the club. He would have never met Dr. Dre, you know, the whole nine, right? So we watch, you know, all of these things change, and those things have leaked into other things. For me as a musician, I used to be all about hoarding and making sure that my work was out in the way that I wanted to be out, and not letting anybody take advantage. And when I let go of that, right? So I think it was a coming to terms with the financial insecurity that I was dealing with, and then creative insecurity of who's going to steal it, who's going to take it. And then I just start, you know, if it's copywritten, what am I tripping for, right? And T-Pain did a great thing. He talked about how he samples and doesn't worry about who he samples, and paying the person 100% of the rights and not tripping because that sample may have popped off and got him more publishing somewhere else.
Right.
You know, paying that creator for the sample and then actually introducing people to his own catalog through a sample that's, you know, widely popular that everybody loves. And I've watched that work in different spaces. We're in the age of collaboration right now, right? The socials, everything has created a space where people want to actually collaborate. They want to get together. They want to work on things. They want to do covers. Like they want to, you know, express their art. They want to share their talent. You know, American Idol, you know, has spurred some of the stuff, you know, all the, you know, shows about showing your talent and who's got talent and what can we do, and look at me, right? It's the look at me space, the IG Reels, stories, everything is saying, look at what we're trying to do and create. And YouTube has exploited that, you know, and creators exploit that all the time. Twitch is doing it right now, you know, as Jarvis spoke about. And yes, it is a place of privilege, but it's also not necessarily financial privilege, but the privilege to understand that even though I'm creating, right, I know I need to protect myself in some way, shape, or form, but at the same time, I can't hold it all. Jazzy Jeff had this whole thing when he at the playlist retreat, we was talking about create and release. You got to create. Why do I have millions of songs on my hard drive and nobody knows about it, right? I could feed the algorithm for years if I needed to, off of the stuff that I have that I've never let out the gate. And when I started to let other people, like sending out reels of stuff that I created, I was like, yo, here, take this, here, check this out, here, listen to this. Like just to friends at first, I started getting placements. I started getting, you know, requests for this, or, you know, you want to do a verse on this, you want to create this soundtrack for this, you want to score this TV show. Like all of those things came from when I finally decided that I wanted to let go. but I had the opportunity and the understanding that first I need to take care of the business part of it. I need to copyright my material. I need to make sure everything is registered with my PRO, you know, just in case, right? And if somebody happened to take a piece of it, I also know how to operate when that happens. Go sell 1 million copies, please, or something like that, because I'm gonna come see you about the publishing. Hey, it's me. Like, but at this point, I think, you know, we can all, you know, it's that, and Chris said it in the chat that, you know, creativity, our creative property right now is currency. This is what we're dealing with. This is our ideas of currency. This creating something out of nothing is currency, and we can either try to keep all the coins, or we can kind of share that coin with the giving model that Joespha was talking about, which understanding that may return. It's altruistic, of course, but giving into the pot may return so much more that we weren't even really prepared for. I think Patreon does a good job with that too. Like, you allow the people to see, you know, you give it some things you just give away to the people that contribute, right? It's not necessarily making them pay at all times. I've seen people get rid of all of the pay models. Like, there's no tiers. Like, pay what you want, do what you want, and make, because, you know, make gobs of dough. Same thing with Bandcamp. Pay what you want. If I want you to pay what you want, I've gotten more from pay what you want than making you pay $20.
Right. One, these are all great points. I want to just add some extra, add some extra pepper to Joespha and Kokayi's point, which are to the platform. Actually, to both of these points, these stories remind me of two things. One, there's this guy, Kevin MacLeod, who makes royalty-free music that is used in commercials, YouTubers. It's literally like the backbone of the internet. If you like start using this man's music and you just know the sounds, you're like, that's Sneaky Snitch. The do 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 do. Right. All you just like start to like every song. You're like, oh, okay, that commercial is using this song. But then I'm always like, how much is that getting back to the artists themselves? Because you go to his blog, he's just a guy who likes making music and graph paper, specifically those two things. I don't know why, but he also has like all of his music is licensed under Creative Commons. It's all available for free, but then he has a pay what you want model as well, where I just excuse me, I just bought you could buy his whole music collection for like $30, and I was like, I'll do this just because I feel like I owe you this, you know, like from like what I've used. Right. And then the other thing that came to mind was how Old Town Road became such a big hit, and it uses this 9 Inch Nails sample from this 2008 album that was released under the Creative Commons license. So, you know, it's like, why is this 9 Inch Nails sample in this Lil Nas X song? And it's like, well, fun fact, you know, Trent Reznor was trying some stuff with, you know, licensing and stuff, and then that's a really interesting outcropping from it, you know, in terms of the collaboration point.
And you look at what happened with Olivia Rodrigo recently.
Oh yeah.
See, she started going back and was like, no, this was inspired by this person. Here you go. Yeah. This was inspired by that person. Put him on as a writer. Like,
right.
Yep.
You know, when they didn't, no one came after her. Like, no one, you know, fans started to notice, hey, this sounds a little like, and just to be protected, you know, just like, you know what, instead of trying to fight a battle, here you go.
The funniest thing to me about that was that, hey, so, you know, good for the context, like Olivia Rodrigo's Good For You bears a lot of similarities to Paramore's song Misery Business. And one of the funniest things about it to me was that Hayley Williams, the front woman of Paramore, just tweeted, "Oh, my publicist is gonna love this," you know, because it's just like, "Oh, great, you want us more in the press? Good job. Here's some free press for you." You know, thanks. Yeah.
But I'm saying, I remember reading there was another artist that tweeted back at her in her defense when somebody was criticizing one of her tracks, was like, "This is literally the creative process." I'm like, this is what it's supposed to be like. And the song was, you know, inspired by something else, which was inspired by something else. But so speaking of these sort of, Kokayi, you mentioned coins, NFTs. Need to say more? I'll say a little bit more. I would like your perspective on them, because we've been talking about like, how could this empower digital creators, but also like we've talked about like ownership and sharing. And when it comes to NFTs, you know, I'm going to own myself an NFT, but it could be openly licensed and therefore everybody can use it. And what is like the value in that for me? You know, it's pure bragging rights. It's, you know, support of the creator, et cetera, et cetera. But I would just love to hear your folks' perspectives on this broadly. Have you sold one? Have you bought one? Do you own the Bitcoins? So
I'm in the process of minting, right? So I'm on Calumet. I'm on Calumet and I'm on OpenSea, and in the process of minting. But I have a good friend, Kane Mayfield, who's down in Florida, and original New Yorker. But he just got into it. He used to do stock broking in New York, left that business, started working in Mexico, doing, you know, real estate business. And then, you know, but he rhymes. He's an MC, been an MCing for a hell of an MC too. And he got into the NFT space and he was like, look, I'm going here so you don't have to. I'm going to ask all the questions so you don't have to. I want to find out like what it is. And then he talked, you know, he talked about, he started looking up everything and finding out everything. And he was like, you know what? It's a great place for us right now, for the independent creator. Right now, he was like, this is great space because this world doesn't care about the people that are jumping to it and making all the press right now, all the superstars, right? So the superstars are going to make money in the beginning because everybody thinks it's the hot thing. He's like, but in the NFT space, people just care if you're around the community. He's like, real creators that really collect, that really want to make sure you're cool. They want to know that you're part of the community. You just can't come dip your toe in and leave with the bag, even though that's what people are doing. So he was like, if you get into it because you want to have art that's out here for a minute, right? It's, you know, it's following the Warren Buffett model of investing, which is don't buy stocks to sell them, which is buy them to keep them and see how it grows over time, right? And so that's what he was saying. He was like, if you create in the NFT space, do it as an expression of your art, get involved with the community, talk to people on different platforms, like jump in and out of whatever, you know, rooms you can on Clubhouse or whatever platform there is, like get in there. And don't think everybody's an expert. Just follow the people and hang out with the people that have been here from the beginning, you know, and been creating from the beginning. So that's how I feel about the NFT space. The ownership part, you could create some sort of thing in your smart contract so that people pay you over time and continue to do so. But it's just like music, you know, if I want to create something dope and I want to put it out there, I'll put it out there in whatever way that it's going to be out there, how I feel as an artist. And that too speaks to the same privilege. I have the opportunity and privilege to be able to create however I feel like creating because of the sweat equity that I put in over time to be where I am right now, right? But other people might be jumping for the money grab, and you know, anything for the money grab, you might grab the money, but then again, you might not. So that's how I feel about that.
I think NFTs are a great, almost counterexample to what's happened with copyright and creativity generally with technology, in that, you know, we have this several hundred-year history of the act of copying becoming cheaper and cheaper, and scarcity just not being a thing as much anymore, all culminating in the internet where scarcity is basically gone. Everything is free to copy, and the underlying technology basically makes it impossible to, you know, keep things secure. And, you know, on the counterexample with physical mediums, you have the copy that you made and that's it. And if you make multiple copies, there's multiple copies, but like there's no easy copying of a lot of that stuff. And now with NFTs, it's sort of switching, you know, flipping the script on that. And now we're creating scarcity in the digital space, which I think is really fascinating for a lot of digital native creators, because all these creators haven't had the opportunity to create physical, you know, scarcity in the same way that physical mediums have. And now there is. And I think that that's going to lead to a lot of, you know, fascinating developments and like the economics around art that, you know, obviously they're very early in the NFT sort of timeline, but I think, you know, 5-10 years out from now, the digital space is just going to look dramatically different.
I think that NFTs have an opportunity also to like do some exploration in the space of provenance of digital assets. Like that's a mostly unexplored area. Like various groups have tried little things to like try to get some money back to some creators, but it takes a lot of both sides working together to get it done. And it's just, you know, it's hard to to negotiate that space right now. And so I think that NFTs, like, provenance is built into the whole concept. And so I think that we have this excellent opportunity in that particular space through smarter people than me this way, not necessarily smarter people than me from a philosophy hand wavy way. Like, we have this excellent opportunity to, this is how my work goes. This is how other people's work goes. No. I think we have this excellent opportunity to really subvert the question of copyright as it stands with media now. You know, Colin, you're right. Like, my current experience with copyright is with my grandmother's estate. She's a writer. She's a science fiction writer, was rather. And like, the rights to that are all about the physical versions of things that existed when she was writing. And then it has led me into this question of, like, if someone were publishing books now on Kindles, on ebooks of some sort, like, how do you manage provenance over those spaces and understand who it originally belonged to versus who currently has the rights to hold it and all of those things?
Right. You need that Tabitha Soren clause in your contracts now. The universe, Tabitha Soren was the one who, when MTV sued over the rights for her stuff, she was the one, her lawyer was the one that introduced the word universe. So in the universe was introduced into controlling that, because the argument was these images are broadcast, but they go into the universe to hit a satellite to come back down. And MTV didn't have the rights to the universe. So he introduced that. So that's the clause that you want to look for. It's the universe, the Tabitha Soren universe clause.
All right, nice.
And on that day, a bunch of lawyers were like, "All right, how do we get the rights?"
Exactly.
To the
it was the universe, and that's how you started getting the whole technology created or here to, you know, which shall be technology that shall be in a lot of contracts. So fun facts. I'm very interested in who your grandmother was.
Suzette Haden Elgin.
Okay, dope.
Yeah,
right.
she wrote the Native Tongue series, which was an inspiration for Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale.
Wow.
Ooh, big deal. Yeah.
That is a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of creative inspiration.
I was just gonna add like a tiny little piece on NFTs, like on the cynical side, my fear is that there is a like low signal to noise ratio in a lot of the spaces that I'm in when it comes to like speculation on NFTs dominating the conversation, because we're constantly talking about this NFT selling for, you know, this amount of money, and then you get a lot of the I want to call it like the flipping influencers, where people have gotten really into speculation and flipping, and thus you get things like Logan Paul making a thing where they're just taking stock photos and like like face swapping animals on it, and then people are bidding that up out of maybe this is going to become the next big thing. That feels counter to me to the goal of what, like, I was sitting in a lot of those clubhouse rooms with a lot of independent artists and a lot of women of color artists in that space, talking about like what it could mean for the provenance, for the world of digital art. And that is extremely inspiring, only to like feel like what is dominating the airwaves on NFTs is, I think, to be a cynic, I'm ultimately optimistic, but I worry that it could like poison the well in terms of perception. And I think that is maybe something to weather, because the underlying philosophy and technology are sound, but like any new thing like this, I feel like there's going to be, you know, people who are in it for, you know, I collect Pokemon cards, and like last year Pokemon cards blew up, and then everybody was into Pokemon cards, and then they weren't. You know, it's like, and then all the prices went down, and everything that everyone was like pumping up, you know, came crashing down. And I feel like once those people get out of the space, I think will probably be for the best.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
it's vultures and carrion, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I completely agree, Jarvis. In the short term, I think right now NFTs act almost a little more like a security than an asset. Like art is an asset, and art oftentimes gains in value over time as you hold it. But right now it looks a lot more like a security, and that there's like a lot of liquidity. And there's actually a scandal with OpenSea recently where there was some like insider trading happening with an employee buying stuff before it was featured on the front page.
Oh,
and the only
man.
change in the underlying asset was it was featured on the front page, and then it like quadrupled in value, and then the employee sold it immediately afterwards. And that sort of divorces the value of it from what the actual art is, and certainly it's more of like a meme stock thing right now than it is actual value.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's like I said before, that's depends on the community, right? So that's those persons who are, especially when we talk about creators of color and we talk about those who are traditionally and historically marginalized and underserved. Absolutely, people get in it for the intention is, I want to go here to make this cool new art. This is a cool new space for me to exist without these superstars coming in and overshadowing me. I can just become something out of nothing. And then here comes the flock of vultures, right? As they see the carrion on the ground and go for the money grab. And the real community is like, nah, that's a money grab. Right? That's a money grab.
Trying to get to the blue ocean is real hard anymore. Right. And that's it. Like if you can get out to the blue ocean for a bit, then like you have this freedom to I don't want to say stake a claim in things. That's not fair. I don't think that's what anyone's trying to do, but like it's easier to be heard if you're in a space where not everybody's there quite yet. But also, there's that gamble long term. Like,
I mean, anything that resembles a market that is underregulated, I feel like is going to attract a certain sort of behavior. Because people are like, oh, a lot of times with art too, with high end art, it's like, oh, it's a tax haven. Oh, it's it's a way to like skirt past certain regulation and like make a profit on something before the SEC can like get a hold of it. And so maybe that's like contributing to people who are like don't really believe in the vision, but are just trying to get in on the ground floor of it's almost like it's day one of stock trading and oh my god, Facebook's public, is this going to be the next big thing? Let's buy it.
Right.
Yeah. Well, so I need to give us a little bit of a time check because time has just blown by. We've had some sort of questions coming along in the chat, but then we've had good conversation in the chat. So I don't think there's any that's really open at this point. Bridget asked about like the superstar effect, and Kokayi, I feel like you spoke to that in terms of like being there with, attention for the right reasons in the long run. And then the provenance versus NFTs and like what is the sort of preferred way to solve provenance? Is NFTs just like a vehicle at this point, or are there other methodologies? So I'm glad that has just sort of happened organically and in real time. If anybody does have a burning question, feel free to like drop it in the chat or find these wonderful humans later. I would like to give everybody a minute though to tell people like how they can find you. Are you on Twitter? Jarvis, I hear, has an account or two on the interwebs.
I'm just Jarvis everywhere. So you can find me.
Right. Same.
But any closing remarks? Anything folks want to add? Colin, I'll start with you.
No, and I thought this was a great discussion, and really, it was great organic growth to sort of like all the topics into each other. So it was just a lot of fun, and thank you to Creative Commons for organizing this and fantastic discussion.
Well, thank you. And thank you to Patreon for being a sponsor. We are very grateful. Jarvis, you wanna at Jarvis us and all the different places?
Well, this has been such a joy. I can't imagine that other than being asleep, this is the best way I could have spent my 7 a.m. No. I really appreciate the discussion, and I'm just honored to be here and speak with you all.
Well, we appreciate you. We would also like you to share the handles for where we can follow your
Oh,
dog.
I'm literally just at Jarvis on, Instagram and Twitter.
And your puppy is there too, right?
My puppy is, around, he makes appearances here and there. I haven't ventured into like puppy Instagram yet.
It's okay. You can be like just like a co-star.
Yeah.
Put it on the stories, man.
Yeah.
Right? Joespha, any closing remarks?
Yeah, you can find me talking about mostly WordPress and open source, but also leadership at Joespha Haden on Twitter. I'm just gonna put it into the chat because my name's hard to spell and I'm familiar with that problem.
Yeah, so, I can relate.
Yeah, at Joespha Haden. That's true on LinkedIn as well. Leadership at scale, open source at scale, that's what I talk about. So if you're interested, you can find me there. And I don't really have any other sort of social media to talk about. But yeah, awesome. I really enjoyed this. Y'all were very fun.
Yeah, I'll say so. Kokayi, you want to close us out?
Yes, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed this conversation. Great to meet you all. And, thank you for, letting us chat about everything. And the one good thing that I love about this is that nobody said, hey, follow the moderators. I'm so happy that that's a Clubhouse thing where they always say, follow the mods. Oh my gosh, I can't stand it. It bothers me so bad. So I appreciate you all. But, it's been a wealth of knowledge. I'm going to check up on all of y'all and try to connect in some sort of other way. Yeah, absolutely.
It's wonderful.
But thank you. Thank you once again to Creative Commons and shout out everybody in the chat.
Happy 20th birthday, Creative Commons.
Yes. Wow. And thank you, Automatic, for the sponsorship too.
Cool.
Good. No. Yeah, no, I didn't say.
Y'all, I work at Automatic and I often don't know what Automatic is sponsoring, and that's on me.
No. We've had some really amazing support from our sort of broader community for this summit, and it's the 20th anniversary. We're really excited about that. We're really excited about sort of the programming. So stick around, you've got 1 minute to figure out what session is happening next if you're inclined to stay in the summit verse or get coffee because it's 8 a.m. for some of you, whatever works. But thank you so much. Have an excellent rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.